Good morning, gardeners, and welcome to Wednesday, May 24th. My name is Catherine, and I created a show called Good Morning Gardeners, even though I can't grow green things, because I'm referring to gardening metaphorically. We're planting the seeds for a better day. We are starting our days out by getting into the right mindset to cultivate a better life for ourselves, better communities, and a better world. Today is the International Women's Day for Peace and Disarmament. In the early 1980s, a group of pro-pacifist feminists from around Europe decided to lend their voice to the already loud cries demanding to disarm nuclear stockpiles and military forces around the world. In 1985, the total number of active nuclear warheads globally was approximately 62,000. On May 24th, International Women's Day for Peace and Disarmament was established. It's a day to celebrate women's voices for a world free from the threat of nuclear arms. We celebrate diplomacy, human decency, and a violence-free, peaceful future. For generations, the only real part that women were allowed to play in armed conflict was that of the grieving woman left behind, while their sons, husbands, and brothers went off to war. The establishment of this day marks a significant change in women's role in the conflict. They are now eager to step out and have their voices heard. And before I move on, I want to make a quick note that there will be no Good Morning Gardeners this Friday or the following Monday and Tuesday. This is because I am going to be taking a really exciting trip, and I'll tell you all about it when I get back. Episodes will resume on Wednesday, May 31st, and hopefully by then I'll have a renewed perspective and some new interesting thoughts to share with you as well. So this morning, I am going to talk with you about an idea that occurred to me yesterday. I think it was yesterday, yeah. But I've just sort of been mulling it over again and again in a different way ever since it first occurred to me. And the way it initially occurred to me was, I'm not sure how, but sometimes I hear something and I kind of go down a rabbit trail and start Googling stuff. And for some reason I was Googling angel numbers, and I don't think I believe in that kind of stuff, but I was still reading about them because, I don't know, I'm that kind of person. And one of the articles, basically I was getting conflicting, I was reading different articles about what a specific angel number meant, conflicting information from different sources. And one source would say that this specific angel number meant that a new opportunity was going to happen for you, and that you were about to achieve a goal that you had been striving towards for a long time. And then another source would say that this angel number, if you saw it, just meant that you had to be open and flexible and go with the flow. And I was trying to rationalize in my mind, like, okay, why are all these articles putting out different, conflicting information? And in my head, I started to sort of rationalize it, but I think I landed on a really solid idea, which is the connection between achieving goals and being open to new experiences or going with the flow. And I think that the reason that these things are linked is because you can never predict exactly how your goals will come to fruition, or how and where new opportunities will become available. And so it's really important that you stay open and keep an open mind along your way through life. And this also kind of put me off in a mental tangent and reminded me of something that I had heard before. I don't know, unfortunately, where I heard it. I think it might have been a TikTok video, if I'm being honest. But basically, the idea is that life is the world, the universe. It has gifts to offer you in every moment. In every moment that you are existing, there is something really amazing for you that is going on around you. And all you have to do in order to accept the gift or to enjoy the amazingness is to be open-minded and take notice of the things around you, to be present in the moment. So this is what has been on my mind recently, and or ever since yesterday. And it also made me think about, the problem with being a goal-oriented person is that it is so easy to get into tunnel vision mode, to where you are just so focused on like the end of your process and obsessing about like helping the end goal. Is that, how can I optimize? How can I improve? How can I like strategize and level up and things like that? But life is happening now. Like life is happening outside of the tunnel, and you can't see it because you've enclosed yourself in. So I think it's really important to try and dissolve the tunnel. It's definitely good and helpful to be goal-oriented, but at the end of the day, even if you, or at the end of your process, when you achieve your goal, when you get to the summit of the mountain that you're climbing, you don't want to look down and see all of this beautiful scenery that you walked by without even admiring it, because you were just staring straight ahead at the summit of the mountain. And I hope that that analogy makes sense. But yeah, that's what I've been thinking about this morning, and I am going to rearrange the segments again today and start with the learning moment. At least that's what I'm calling it, because I'm going to be reading to you about happiness from Psycho-Cybernetics. And I'm going to be reading from a chapter called You Can Acquire the Habit of Happiness. So the author, Maxwell Maltz, says, in this chapter, I want to discuss with you the subject of happiness, not from a philosophical, from a medical standpoint. Dr. John A. Schindler's definition of happiness is a state of the mind in which our thinking is pleasant a good share of the time. From a medical standpoint, and also from an ethical standpoint, I do not believe that simple definition can be improved upon. It is what we are talking about in this chapter. And he says, happiness is good medicine. Happiness is native to the human mind and its physical machine. We think better, perform better, feel better, and are healthier when we are happy. Even our physical sense organs work better. Russian psychologist K. Kekcheev tested people when they were thinking pleasant and unpleasant thoughts. He found that when thinking pleasant thoughts, they could see better, taste, smell, and hear better, and detect finer differences in touch. Dr. William Bates proved that eyesight improves immediately when the individual is thinking pleasant thoughts or visualizing pleasant scenes. Margaret Corbett has found that memory is greatly improved and that the mind is relaxed when the subject is thinking pleasant thoughts. Psychosomatic medicine has proved that our stomachs, liver, heart, and all our internal organs function better when we are happy. Happiness is not something that is earned or deserved. Happiness is not a moral issue, any more than the circulation of the blood is a moral issue. Both are necessary to health and well-being. Happiness is simply a state of mind in which our thinking is pleasant a good share of the time. If you wait until you deserve to think pleasant thoughts, you are likely to think unpleasant thoughts concerning your own unworthiness. Happiness is not the reward of virtue, said Spinoza, but virtue itself. So I find that passage really interesting because I, for most of my life, have thought of happiness as something that is mostly irrelevant. Emotion, it's just an emotion, it's just fleeting. I've spoken about this before on this show, but I used to think of it as kind of like the weather of the mind, like you couldn't really control it and you just had to come up with like coping strategies. But, thanks in part to reading Psycho-Cybernetics, I've realized that that isn't true. And with that, we are going to move on to what I am calling our feel-good moment for the day. I am going to read to you from Art as Therapy. This book is all about what art does, what it should do, and how it can change the world. The authors claim that art has 7 functions: remembering, hope, sorrow, rebalancing, self-understanding, growth, and appreciation. We are going to be reading about the 7th function of art, appreciation, because appreciation is a mental habit that is intricately tied to happiness. So, one of our major flaws and causes of our unhappiness is that we find it hard to take note of what is always around. We suffer because we lose sight of the value of what is before us, and we yearn, often unfairly, for the imagined attractions of elsewhere. The problem is partly caused by our skill at getting used to things, our mastery of the art of habituation. Habit is the mechanism whereby behavior becomes automatic across a range of areas of our functioning. It offers us many benefits. Before we've picked up the habit of driving, we need to be acutely conscious of everything that's going on as we sit at the wheel. Our senses are highly alert to sounds, lights, movements, and to the sheer alarming implausibility of steering a box of steel at speed through the world. This hyper-awareness can make driving a test of nerves. However, after years of practice, it gradually becomes possible to drive for miles while hardly thinking consciously about changing gears or indicating. Our actions become unconscious, and we can ponder the meaning of life while negotiating a roundabout. However, habit can just as easily become a cause of misfortune when it makes us prone to barely registering things that, although familiar, deserve careful engagement. Instead of editing out the lesser things so that we can concentrate on what is crucial, as ideally happens on the road, we end up editing out elements of the world that have much to offer us. Art is one resource that can lead us back to a more accurate assessment of what is valuable by working against habit and inviting us to recalibrate what we admire or love. Few people pay much attention to the appearance of beer cans. They are amongst the most lowly utilitarian objects we encounter. However, in 1960, the American artist Jasper Johns used the resource of art to encourage us to see them afresh. He cast 2 examples in bronze, painted the name of their company on the sides, and placed them close together on a small base. When we see them in a gallery or look at them in a photograph, our attention is arrested and directed. We pay a great deal more attention than we normally would to their shape and design, recognizing the elegance of the maker's elliptical logo and the attractive proportions of each cylinder. The heavy, costly material they are made of makes us newly aware of their separateness and oddity. We see them as though we had never laid eyes on cans before, acknowledging their intriguing identities as a child or a Martian, both free of habit in this area, might naturally do. Johns is teaching us a lesson: how to look with kinder and more alert eyes at the world around us. This particular instance may be very modest. Learning to appreciate the look of a beer can may in itself make little improvement to our daily lives, but the lesson grows more substantial when we consider its general applicability to the many other objects, situations, moods, and people that lie before us in a state of pre-artistic neglect. Our ordinary responses, not just to beer cans, but to the sky, our friends, the shapes of rooms, the joys of our children, the buildings we drive past every day, and the expressions on the faces of our spouses, are too often flattened and cliched. We take little note because we rest assured that we have already seen them clearly enough, a prejudice that art proudly contradicts by foregrounding all that we are likely to have missed. So I hope you loved listening to that passage as much as I enjoyed reading it today. I don't do a ton of preparation for this show. After I wake up and start drinking coffee, I start to think, okay, what am I going to talk about today? And I try to tie an issue or topic that has been on my mind with a passage that I have previously read in a book, but it doesn't always work. That I haven't read that many books, at least not yet. And um, the way that I happened upon that passage today, yeah, it just made me happy. I really appreciate it because that was exactly the kind of thing that I was looking for. And I didn't remember specifically that passage from when I read that book. I think I read that one last year or a couple years ago. But I just thought, I wonder if art as therapy has something to say about this, and it did. So that was cool. And for our focus moment today, I almost feel like I don't even need to give you a prompt because that section had so many ideas for increasing your appreciation of life or your happiness. But let's just say this. For today, try to remember to be open to the beauty of every moment. The beauty of your morning coffee or tea. The beauty of drinking a glass of water. The beauty of taking a deep breath of air. Of course, it's impossible to maintain this level of mindfulness constantly, moment to moment, and be productive at the same time. But I think it would be counterproductive not to pause every now and then, maybe every few hours or so, and remind yourself to be open to the beauty that surrounds you. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I will speak with you again tomorrow.